Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Even though it's a while since I gave a talk in this monastery, having been away for 5 weeks, I have been giving several talks over in India and in Thailand. So I still feel very much in shape as far as giving talks are concerned. And one of the subjects I wanted to talk about this evening, something which came up and which many of the monks talked with me about in public and in private, in Thailand especially, was the subject of the body contemplations. And it's something I don't talk about too much in these talks. I think probably the main reason is that in my practice as a monk, that it didn't seem to be such a huge problem for me. And even doing such things as going to the see autopsies and seeing dead bodies, it never really was something which really hit me hard when I went to see those places. In fact, I was more interested in what was going on in there than repulsed from seeing the dead corpses. And I do recall in my early life, my father had a television, and it was a black and white set, and there was a program on that television, I think it was called Your Body, and it was a television program just showing operations, and the camera above the body. This was 40 years ago, 45 years ago, probably, no, maybe 40 years ago. I was only a sort of a tiny boy at the time, but I would demand to see this on the television. And I was so insistent that my parents would not refuse me, and they went out of the room for the 15 minutes because they couldn't stand even watching in black and white. There was no red blood there at all, it was just grey and dark, and that's all. They couldn't stand watching a body being cut apart. Even my brother went out of the room as well, left me in the room in front of the television all by myself until it was over, and I called him back in again. And so just maybe my nature was such that things like the body did not really create too much of a problem. But nevertheless, that doesn't mind, you still practice a degree of the body contemplations, and they are emphasized in the forest tradition, and people wanted to find out exactly how they fit into the scheme of things. It's important that when we look at any of these practices, especially meditative practices, that we should know what their purpose is, what they're aiming for, as well as knowing how to do these things, and to know the stages of development of these processes of mental cultivation and body cultivation. Because if we don't know the purpose of it, then we tend to, we may know how to sort of swim, but we don't know where to swim to. We may know how to ride a car, but drive a car, we don't know where the destination is. And the whole point that all of these practices, all of these techniques, they all have a goal. They all have a purpose to them. And so it's nice to be able to know what that purpose is. And I pointed out before in the both from your own experience and also the reading from the suttas, the whole purpose of the body contemplations, as made very explicit in the Satipatthana suttas, is that to get that understanding about the body having nothing to do with a self, not me, not mine. It's just a body, that's all there is. As it says in the Satipatthana, that by noticing the rising or the ceasing, or both the rising and the ceasing of the body, and that one just knows that this is just body, that's all. Just enough to have that wisdom, that insight, this is not me, not mine, not a self, to be free of that body. And this is actually how the Lord Buddha described body contemplation in the Satipatthana suttas. Of course, that whole purpose of uncovering sort of the attachment which is part of the self-idea, the self-view, is something which is a very high goal. And that's why that I've always considered the forest teachers teaching that body contemplation in two stages, as it were. And the first is the stage prior to gaining samadhi, and the second is the stage after samadhi. And you've heard me talk so often here, samadhi is so important to the development of the mind towards nibbana, that you have to look at that as one of the first stages which we really have to attain and develop. And this is, I think, where many of the forest teachers would emphasize body contemplation for those monks, novices, anagarikas, lay people, who'd yet to gain those deep samadhi experiences. And so this first purpose of body contemplation is to clean away the hindrances so that samadhi can happen and you can get into deep jhanas. And the second stage of the body contemplations will be to use the experience of jhanas, either the experience themselves or the power conferred on the mind by those experiences, to actually see this body so deeply that you can really disentangle this attachment of my body or me or a self. But first of all, when we talk about the purpose, the reason for doing the body contemplations, as first of all gaining samadhi, you can see very easily, or you should be able to understand very easily, the power and the power of body contemplation, the reason why it does clear the path for samadhi to happen. The first of the hindrances which block samadhi is kamachanda. And of that, the concern for the objects of the senses. Now, one of the biggest ones is like lust, just desire for members of the opposite sex, or if you are homosexual, desire for the people of the same gender. And that is a desire for a body. And we all know, had experience of these things, that when that one lust is present in the mind, the body looks beautiful, and the body looks attractive and desirable. And one of the first purposes of body contemplation is to lessen that lust, to get sort of reality more to the forefront of the mind, so that one is not deluded by a mind which only sees a part of the story. And that's why one of the first functions of body contemplation should be to lessen lust. And that's why that you've heard me say that how that in my young years as a monk I used to see pretty girls, and I always used to look for their pimples. If you have seen an autopsy and seen a pretty girl, on the stainless steel railings being cut apart, then that of course is also very moving, because it's an image which you can bring up at any time. And that image which brings up on that time is you can see that beautiful girl in the newspaper or in front of you on the street, and just do a mental autopsy on her. I know that sometimes women think that men look at them and undressing them. When monks look upon them, they're actually going much deeper than that. They're even taking their skin off and looking inside at their guts and everything else which is in there. And there's a certain sense of not revulsion so much as just, well, what's the big deal? That when you take off all of the embellishments, of a body, and when you look at skin is just skin. That's all. Whether it's on the private parts of a lady or whether it's on your own leg, skin is just skin. And you open up the muscles, and just muscles are just muscles. That's all. Bones are bones, and liver is liver, and all that sort of stuff. And there's nothing in there which is conducive of real lust. There's nothing which is, to me anyway, conducive like of aversion and repulsion. It's just body, that's all. And to see it as just body, and just to have the opportunity to go to a place like an autopsy, or see dead bodies again and again and again and again, or see funerals, and see especially open funerals where the body is burnt on a pyre, and you can actually see the different stages of the body burning and opening up and things dripping out. That actually helps you just to have a perspective which you can bring up at any time for the purpose of lessening lust. Not only can you look at the components of the body, like taking it apart, using the perspectives which you've gained on going to autopsies or funerals or seeing dead people, but also another part of body contemplation which helps lessen lust is to just see the aging process of a person. And if you see like a young girl or a young lady, just like allow them to grow old before your eyes. Just allow perception, just to put wrinkles on, and to allow their breasts to sag, and allow their sort of body to stoop, and allow sort of their eyes to get all wrinkled, and their skin to get all leathery, and their hair to go grey and start falling out. And we see enough old ladies around the place that we can actually do that reasonably easy. We can see just the old person amidst that young person. And again, that takes off all of the illusion of like beauty forever and something which is desirable. These are very important reflections, because it does serve the purpose of lessening lust. But the point is, with each of these like defilements, that if the defilement is raging through your mind at the time, you can't really do very much. It's the time to do such reflections is when lust is not a problem. It's the simile which Ajahn Brahm used to use, that sort of when you're actually in the ring fighting in a boxing tournament, you can't train then. Everything goes so fast, it's automatic and it's completely conditioned. Where you actually learn your technique and your skill as a boxer, it's not actually in the ring when you're fighting an opponent, but it's in the training sessions, in the sparring sessions. That's where you learn, when there's not an opponent in front of you. In the same way that if lust is a problem which comes from time to time, the opportunity, the best opportunity to really deal with it is not when the opponent is right in front of you. The time to deal with it is just when you feel that freedom, that opportunity, that ease of mind to start thinking and reflecting on the body contemplations, and just start imagining just what a person really is, what a woman is, what a man is, what youth is, and what old age is. And by contemplating that again and again and again, when you think it's not a problem, it means you are reconditioning the mind away from the way the world has conditioned you. You've seen so many movies, seen so much television of boy meets girl and live happily ever after or whatever. And in the movies, in the TV, just all of the pimples are all covered over with makeup. Everything is done so beautifully and so wonderfully. It is a fantasy, but we take that fantasy on because we're conditioned by it. And we've got to recondition the mind. We recondition the mind in this way when we're feeling at ease, when there's space in our mind, where we're not confronted by an opponent such as lust or ill will, and we're preparing ourselves. So the time to do this degree of body contemplation is not in the midst of an attack of lust. You just can't do it then. You're either trained and it happens, or you haven't trained and you're lost. So train yourself now. Train yourself when there's space in the mind to really look at these things. And then it gives you so much more freedom in the world. Like, if there is an attack of lust, it just is binding you. And, it is like you're in a prison, completely obsessed by one idea, and not having even a chance to sleep peacefully at night, just dreaming and fantasizing and just hot throughout the whole body. When a person's ever had such attacks of lust, for long periods of time, it's just so painful. It's like a fever. And so it's wonderful to be rid of that, and to be, as it were, in control, and sort of at ease. And so it's well worth doing. All this is just conditioning the mind. So don't waste those opportunities. And if you have lust which comes up in your monastic life from time to time, and realize there's something you need to do there, when the lust is abated, when you have the time, do some body contemplation. And the body contemplation will go much deeper than just overcoming the worst parts of lust. Because with the body, comes these five senses. And these five senses are just what the body is all about. If you want to say what the body is, you might say the 32 parts of the body. You might say, the sort of the hard parts and the liquid parts, the four elements which make up this body. But really, it's sort of when you look upon the purpose of this body, the insight came many years ago that against what the medical fraternity says, that these senses are here to protect the body and to make sure the body is safe. It's basically the body is here to give a vehicle, a playground for the five senses to mess around and to explore the world and to find joy here and happiness there. Without this body, the five senses just can't play around anymore. And I think it's well known that if these five senses, for one reason or another, get hurt and damaged and they can't work anymore, then the body dies. It's got no purpose anymore. So I've always of the strong idea now that it's the purpose of this body is to give a vehicle for the five senses. To seek pleasure in the world. And that's why a person takes on a new body after death, because they want another vehicle, to search out the pleasures of the world. In the same way like a car is there to go to the pub, to go to the movies, to go there and seek pleasure in the world. That's the only purpose of the car. Same the purpose of a body is to give these five senses the vehicle, the means to go out and find pleasure. And seeing this such a close and intricate connection between the body and the five senses, you just realize this body is the five senses. The five senses is the body. And this whole body, you can feel its touch, its sensitive areas, and there's basically very little in this body which isn't sensitive. Either to touch, to heat, to cold, the nose to smells, the tongue to tastes, and the ear to sounds. And it's not just the ear which is sensitive to sounds, some of the other vibrations you can feel in the body. And the eyes to sight, to light. This whole body is a sensitive mechanism. And when we start to contemplate the body in this respect, we realize that when you have to overcome the five senses and allow them to cease, to get into jhanas, it's very much letting go of this body. And letting go of the five senses is a letting go of the body. A letting go of the body is a letting go of the five senses. Because sometimes I've contemplated, when you're getting deep into meditation, but you just can't go that little bit further, because there's sounds which are disturbing you, or there's an ache or a heat or an itch in your throat which is disturbing you. Sometimes I've often contemplated, why am I disturbed by these things? And so often when you when you are meditating and there's sounds of the cicadas outside, or the sound of cars, or the sound of someone speaking, sometimes I wonder, why am I hearing this? This has got nothing to do with me. I'm not interested in this. It's not important. Why can't I just stop listening to this? And the reason why that I couldn't stop listening to that noise outside, or I couldn't stop attending to the aches and pains, heat and cold in the body, was because deep down that I've been programmed, conditioned to pay attention to sounds and feelings in the body for security, for safety, for preservation of this body of so-called mine. And I'm sure that any, again, psychologist would understand that those two senses of hearing and feeling, as well as sight, these are really your protective mechanisms, your alarms. Because if there's an animal which is walking through the bush or through the jungle, you hear it. And it's a common experience. We were talking about this the other night at tea time. That in the jungles, it's happened so often to me, that you've been sitting there in your mosquito net and you hear this sound, and it really appears to you as a huge animal. Then you're not imagining this, it actually sounds like a huge animal, and when it gets close you get a bit scared, you shine your flashlight there and it's just a small little mouse. During the daytime the mouse just sounds like a mouse, but during the night it sounds like an elephant. And what's going on there? And the reason is, it's just the mind is overcompensating just to make sure, just in case. And it's just because, I'm not sure, maybe because of genetically inbred conditioning, that we lived in jungles before. Jungles are dangerous, people do get eaten, they do get trampled upon, they do get bitten by snakes, they do die. And we've got this very sensitive warning mechanism that any sounds, we have to listen to them straight away. It's beyond our control, it seems, because it's just a deep conditioning inside of us. All it is a conditioning based on attachment to the body. Thinking this body is important, this body is mine, I have to look after this body, I can't leave the sense of sound turned off, because who knows, if I'm not listening, anything can happen. If I'm not feeling the body, anything could happen. I could get ants crawling on me, I could get a snake biting me, I could get someone creeping up on me. In the same way, when a person has got valuables in their house, they're very concerned about that, and all their senses are out there guarding those valuables. The same way that our senses guard what we think is valuable, this body of ours, and that's the attachment to the body. If we can just let go of that attachment to the body, by realizing this body is just a mess of flesh and bones and skin and something like that, it's not really valuable, it's not really important. You had many bodies over the eons of samsara, and this particular body you're in now is nothing special. So you have loads and loads of bodies. So the strong practitioners are willing to sacrifice their body for the Dhamma. They're willing to die for the Dhamma. In other words, they're not concerned about this body. It's much better to sort of have the tiger eat you while staying in the forest than not sort of seek seclusion at all. In other words, you can sit there, you're not really concerned. You let go of the body. Now, to gain that degree of renunciation, of letting go of the body, is quite difficult to do. And this is not something which lies just on the intellectual plane of thoughts and ideas. It's something which lies on the deepest levels of your conditioning. And very often, if you find that you get to such a level of meditation, but you can't go deeper because you can't really let go of the sounds and the feelings in the body, it means that there is an attachment to the body there. You still think this body is valuable, you're afraid to let it go, to leave it alone because you think something might happen to it. Obviously, like faith helps enormously here, the faith in the teachers tell you, just let go, it's fine, nothing will happen to you. And that's important, to have that faith. But also just to have the wisdom that it's great to be able to leave the body. The body is just not a big thing at all. That's why that people who have had out-of-the-body experiences, who've just died and seen their body down there at a distance, on the operating table or on a motorbike accident. One of the children children I taught at school. So said he had a motorbike accident once and scared the life out of him. No, not quite, but almost, because he just was floating above and seeing his mangled body below. Fortunately, he came back and recovered, and but it was an incident which would stay with him for the rest of their life, realizing the body is just a body, it's not such a big deal anymore. And however you contemplate that body, whether it's a 32 part, seeing dead bodies, seeing autopsies, just taking it apart as 4 elements, focusing on it, seeing it decay, seeing other animals decay, seeing the similarity between all bodies, whether human bodies, animal bodies, bird bodies, seeing as them, so you, seeing there's nothing beautiful here, there's nothing really valuable here, it's just a body, that's all, one body amongst many bodies. Once you actually see that, reflect upon that, if it really has got to the depth of it, or close to the depth of it, it should make it easy to let go of the body. It should be no problem at all just to be sitting here and just watch the present moment, watch the silence, get into the breath. Even when you're watching the breath, you're not disturbed about noises, you're not disturbed about pains and aches in the body. You're just watching the breath because you're confident enough to let go of the body. You don't care about your legs or your bum or your back or anywhere else. Just leave it alone. It's not mine, it's somebody else's problem. And if you have that degree of detachment born of body contemplation, it means that the body is easy to let go of. It means the senses can shut down, they've got no work to do. And it means you can get into the jhanas. The door becomes open. It is one of the biggest hindrances to the entrance of jhanas. It's just these 5 senses, shutting them down at the very end. The doer, which I keep talking about, is also the controller. It is the one who's the so-called security guard, trying to make sure everything's okay. And it's a security guard which never really fulfills its purpose, because it's supposed to make sure everything's okay, but just creates more problems than it solves. It never makes you okay, but always keeps you working. So it's nice to be able to shut down that security guard of the doer by understanding there's nothing to guard anyway, it's just a body, that's all. So this becomes my understanding of that more refined first stage of body contemplation. Having enough renunciation of this body, enough sense of dispassion towards this body, to allow the 5 senses to cease and get into a jhana. Because the jhanas are the world of the mind. It's mind-only states. Even when a nimitta comes up, that's the first stage. Just when the 5 senses stop. And the 6th sense, the mind, becomes manifest. And having seen that as the process of letting go, and just knowing that sort of that road into deep samadhi, you can see that this is what's happening. 6 senses going, and with it the body. And in jhana there's just no body consciousness at all. I know that some monks often get confused, and this is just a little academic point here. In some of the suttas they use similes for the 4 jhanas, and they use the word kaya, suffusing the whole kaya with piti sukha, just like a skilled bath attendant suffuses a lump of chunam just with water, so there's no part of that lump of clay which isn't permeated by the water. In the same way, there's no part of the kaya which is not permeated by piti sukha. It's, of course, when I was a young monk, you're just quite confused about that, because certainly in deep samadhis, just through experience, there was no sensation of anywhere in the body. Even in some medium samadhis, just not into jhanas, when you're just fully aware of the breath. That's fully aware of the breath means just fully aware of the breath. You're not aware of any other part of your body. You're not aware of your feet or your knees and your bottom. You're just aware of breath. You're not even aware of your hands. Sometimes it used to be fun, just when the hands disappeared, oh, where are my fingers? When I wasn't paying attention to them, they'd just disappear. And you pay attention to them, oh, there they were again. But they'd actually disappear. By doing that, you'd know that they'd gone. But the word kaya in Pali does not necessarily mean the physical body. It means any group of things. In the same way, the English word body means anything from a physical body to a body of soldiers to a corporate body to a body of evidence. A body of evidence. There's no four elements there. There's no sort of solid substance there. We still call it body of evidence. It means just a group of facts supporting a particular case. And this is the same word in Pali. So everybody knows that when you do the third training in the Anapanasati Sutta, Sabakaya Patisangvedi, and you breathe in, you breathe out. That's how you train yourself. Sabakaya Patisangvedi literally means all kaya he feels. As he breathes in and breathes out, that's how he trains himself. It does not mean you've got to somehow, as you breathe in, make sure that you know your 5 left toes and your 5 right toes. You know your left ear and your right ear and where everything else in your body is. And what it means is the whole body of the breath. The whole breath body. It means from the very beginning of an in-breath to the end of the out-breath, with spaces in between, the very beginning of the out-breath to the end of the out-breath, all the whole of the breath. And every meditation teacher, commentaries, every manual I've ever read on meditation, all agree on that one at least. And that's a good indication of what this word kaya means. And it's also with that sakaya ditthi of the hindrance, the defilements, the fetter which stops one being a stream winner. It doesn't mean some view of the physical body. It means this whole group of khandhas, this whole conglomeration which makes up this thing called the mind and the body. Even like namakaya, rupakaya, in the some or other in the suttas, you find those words. It just means a group of mental elements, a group of physical elements, kaya again. So don't get deceived by that Pali word kaya. If you look through the suttas a lot and you get in Pali and you get to know through familiarity with these terms, you get to understand their meaning. And so when in the suttas it said about pervading the whole of this body, it means the whole of the body of that experience. So the piti sukha of Ajahn is just there continuously, fully. And there's no perception at that time which is apart from the piti sukha. There's no person outside watching that piti sukha. There's no gap in that piti sukha. In the same way that watching the whole body of the breath, there's no gap of attention. The mind is with the breath continually, one moment after another, with no interruption. That's what it means in that simile, just pure piti sukha. There's no part of the experience which is apart from piti sukha. It's one-pointed. That's what one-pointed means, just one perception continuously over a long period of time. So understanding that, you can understand just this whole idea of like samadhi and jhana, is just letting go of the body. And to let go of the body, the physical body here I'm talking about, you have to develop some body contemplations so that you're not attached to this body anymore. Even like dying, sometimes people say that we should do lots of body contemplation, so at the time of the death we can actually let go of this body. We've got to leave it anyway. We might as well leave it voluntarily instead of sort of clinging onto it at the very end. And indeed, I've seen cases, usually actually not so much, the case which I remember was not a Buddhist, but it was like a sort of Christian, Buddhist, New Age person who was coming for counselling, and she struggled to the end to breathe and to live. She didn't want to die, despite all of my advice and counselling. And that was a terrible way to go. much better just to let go. And so sometimes we say we do this body contemplation or death contemplation so that when it's our time to just to lay down these 5 khandhas, that we can do so with a bit of gentility and grace. At the very least we won't upset other people who are looking, and we'll have a much better time for ourselves. But again, the act of death, or the moments of death, the process of death, is so similar to the process of samadhi, just letting the body alone, let it go. But that attachment to the body means that association with the body, that saying it's mine, it's me, it's my body, it's important to me, it's valuable to me. That is what makes it hard at the end. But people who do die temporarily, or they die and they remember what happens to them after the death, have such a similar experience of floating outside the body and just going off into a light. The nimitta again. This nimitta is just when the mind starts to manifest. Once they start to lose consciousness and perception of body and body things, they go off to a light. I mean, just the mind starts to see this nimitta and starts to approach it. That's usually what happens. The same as in jhanas, going into and through that nimitta. Or rather, sometimes in people who die or out-of-body experiences, they go through and they sort of bounce out again. And they have all these, still have some strong states of mind and images and complex nimittas, but it's still sort of not deep enough. Understanding jhanas, you actually understand what's going on here, and the nature of the body, the nature of the mind. So the first stage, the first purpose of kayagata sati, or body contemplations, is to get rid of lust, first of all, then get rid of all the other concerns with this body by seeing the body for what it is, so you can really detach from it. And the sign that you can detach from this body temporarily is your ability to get nimittas and jhanas even. If you haven't got a nimitta yet in your meditation, it's because very likely there's still some association with the body. This is mine. And so body contemplation can do wonders. And of course, once one has got that jhanas, and then afterwards, if you wish to do body contemplation, the mind again is empowered. You can really sort of take this body apart very easily, and take other people's bodies apart. It's just the mind after a jhana, just like a well-trained servant, like one of these English butlers who never answers back. You tell them to go and get you a cup of tea, and they get you a cup of tea, and it's exactly what you want. They never make mistakes. And a mind which is emerged from a jhana is just like the very best of servants. You just tell it what to do and it just does it, to the fullest of your expectations. So you ask it to contemplate the body and you can just go right into it and contemplate it with such ease. That's when you understand those words that the mind is malleable, workable and soft. The deeper the jhana, the more malleable, workable, soft it is. And so this is the second time to really do body contemplation, because this is for once and for all. You can really look upon this body in its 5 senses, take it apart, realize exactly what it is, even do the reflections on your past lives, which is another type of body contemplation. I would actually put that in as a body contemplation, because it gives the perspective, not just the body from birth to old age, but the next body and the body after that. And just see it in this whole perspective of just one body after another. You can only see just how many bodies you've lived in. And then of course this one is just not important anymore. It's just another one. Here we go again. And it's not special, it's not important, it's not valuable. Remember, rare things become valuable, but when they're sort of so common as dirt, which anyone can pick up at any time, they have no value anymore. And because this is the only body we know, or we think we know, and then we think this is so important to us, and so valuable, and so essential, even sacred. So sometimes it's nice after a deep meditation to recollect some past lives, And then you can sometimes see just whole spans of life. The whole span when you were before born a beautiful woman and then an old hag who no one wants. It gives you an idea of this beauty in the body and what happens to it afterwards. At the moment we're just in the beginning parts of our lives. There's only a few of us are starting to get old and starting to fall apart. But a lot of us just, we might be able to imagine that, but the imagination and the reality are sometimes far apart. But past life memories, you can actually know that, and know what it's like to get old and really sick and to get very, very old and die. And that gives the body a perspective. And if you are just focusing deeply on the body, whether it's you find that the nimittas come up very easily. You can actually form a nimitta of your body and give yourself your own autopsy. Take apart your own body. Dissect it, look at it, see it. The whole idea is just to see it's just nothing important. Just a body, that's all. It rises, it passes away, comes and goes. No big deal. Which means that you can let it go, and with letting go of the body should be letting go of all concern with these five senses. The pleasures of the world are the pleasures in the body. The sexual orgasm in the body. Beautiful sights, you feel it in your heart. Joy, laughter, it's all here in the guts. It's all with the body. And the pain, the ache, that's all right here in the body. The hatred, the disappointment, you feel it inside. With the body is all this pleasure and pain for most people. That's why it's called amisa sukha, amisa dukkha. Happiness and suffering of the world. So we have to let go of that. And if we can do that, sort of, at least after jhanas, at least we're actually getting rid of this attachment to the body and the five senses as being me and being mine, and all the Vedana, all the Sanya, all the Sankhara, all the consciousness which is associated with this. We're getting rid of a heap of defilements and kilesas. But really it's not enough to go the whole hog. Because the problem with Kayagata Sati, just by itself, it just doesn't touch just what I keep on saying as the strongholds of the illusion of self, the doer and the knower, all associated with the citta, with the mind. And somehow, sooner or later, we have to see that which knows, the mind consciousness, and that which does, the jadana, to see just through insight, to see that in its rising, that in its falling, that in its arising and falling, to see this is just mind, that's all. As in the third Satipatthana, the Jittanupassi. To see the mind, to see the citta and see it just rising, falling, nothing there. And it's only when you complete that one as well, when you see that with all the five khandhas, whether the rupa khandha, this physical body, or the Vedanas, not just the Vedanas associated with the five senses in the body, but even the Vedanas in the mind, even the pure mind states in jhanas. To see all those, just Vedana, that's all. Happiness and bliss, and then no bliss. And I keep on saying it's weird, but the happiness of first jhana compared to the happiness of second jhana is suffering. The bliss, but it's not good enough. So all this happiness and suffering business is all relative. And to see even the happinesses of the mind are just relative. There's always another one, until there's nothing at all, which is the highest happiness. Nirodha Samapatti, the end of all perception and feeling. Nibbana, here and now. But actually to see just the doer and the knower in the mind, there's just rising and falling. There's insubstantial, there's not entities which exist by themselves. To know, you have to know something. to do to do something, doing and knowing. And when one actually perceives these, then you get to the whole five khandhas, not just the body and the Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara and the body consciousnesses, the sight, sound, smell, taste and physical touch consciousnesses, but all of the mind consciousnesses as well. See those as empty, completely sunyata, rising and falling, just going on our own way. And if you can actually see that, you can see there's no place in the world where you can have a self, a soul, a me or a mine. There's no owner, there's no being, no person, no self, no essence. You can just see this emptiness goes right the way through. There's not a nice little dot there somewhere in the center where you are. Even the dot at the center is just, you go into that and it's just a big hole in the middle. And that's actually just the realizing of that full emptiness, full anatta, the whole five khandhas, not a self, not me, not a mine. And of course that's the stream winning. After the stream winning, it's great to do kaya gata sati again, because for the stream winner to get to, once you know this, you still got to stop this old conditioning of the body again. You've seen it, you know it, but you still, the new knowledge is competing with the old knowledge, new conditioning with the old conditioning. And by developing the kaya gata sati, again, again and again, seeing that this body is not substantial, not a me, not beautiful, not ugly, nothing to really worry about, nothing to really be concerned about. So the stream winner, the learner, the Aryan, starts to abandon concern about the body more and more and more. I chose my words carefully there, abandon concern about this body. So much of our time is taken up with body things. So much of sheer minutes and time in your consciousness is taken up with this body, making it comfortable, feeding it, washing it, dressing it. It's amazing how much time we spend scratching it, moving it this way, moving it that way, getting comfortable, exercising it, doing yoga. Goodness knows what else we have to do with this body. Even resting it, taking it to the toilet. It takes 80-90% of the day sometimes for many people, just with this body. It's got no time for anything else, just looking after this body. So by letting go of this body, the stream winner sort of gives more time for the mind, more time for jhanas, more time just for letting go of the world and going to the realm of the mind. You're actually leaving this world, not as an idea, but as a practice. Leaving the world more and more and more and spending more time in the realm of the mind. Why? Because you're basically not interested in this world of body and the things to do with the body. That's why you do find some of these great monks going off into the jungles, staying by themselves. What are they doing there? They're just doing jhanas mostly. Just letting go of the whole body, not really concerned about if they get eaten by a tiger or not. Because they're just dwelling in the realm of the mind. Spending as much time as possible, living a life as simple as possible, so little time is required to look after this body. Just one meal a day. There's no need to sort of sweep too much and build big palaces for the body, just a simple hut. It's good enough, because it's easy to maintain. You don't just spend all time doing things. Spend all the time just sitting in the mind, away from the world. And doing that is more reconditioning of the mind. Anagami comes in those ways. It's completely disinterested in the body and the world of the five senses. What was it? Rupa Raga Vyapada. It's just the fetters abandoned by the Anagami. The Rupa Raga, the body and the world of the body, completely abandoned, not really concerned about that at all. And only the last fetter left, or the last five fetters, all merge into one, just the attachment to the mind. And of course, The anagami already knows that the mind is not me, not a self. There's no doer, there's no knower in there, but still the conditioning is there. Still, like they say, the thoughts of, that I am this person who's thinking, I am the person who's knowing. Sometimes it slips in because of past habits. But for the Arahat, just fully reconditioned. So that's why they say the Arahat has perfect mindfulness. What it means perfect mindfulness means fully knows all time that whatever it hears, sees, smells, tastes, touches, all cognizes. The thing doing the cognizing isn't a me or a mind or a self. The object being cognized is not me or mine or a self. The process is not me, not mine, not a self. There's nobody in here at all, so never perceived, thought of, or conceived in any of those terms at any time. That's what an arahat is. That's why it's called perfect mindfulness. Perfect seeing in terms of anatta. So this is, how the practices of contemplation of the body, their relevance to the whole path, according to my understanding and my knowledge of the suttas. And they're very well worth doing. So please, don't neglect them. They're important. I do often contemplate just how can more people in this monastery gain deep samadhi, and perhaps that's one of the things we could actually pay some attention to. Sort of, again, not when lust is right in front of you, just when lust isn't there. To really reflect upon this body. Look at sort of skulls, look at pictures of bodies being opened up. Find opportunities if you go overseas, like we managed to do, seeing autopsies or rows of deceased bodies being carved up. Go to funerals and touch the dead bodies, feel them, and get this sort of the image deeply into your consciousness so you can bring it up again later. And sort of transfer that image onto yourself, just as they are, soon I will be. And it will lessen lust. It will lessen the entanglement with this physical body. It will make meditation easier, make the jhanas more available. And after the jhanas, you can really cut this attachment, this feeling this body is something to do with me. You even get past life and to see this whole range of bodies, and that will give you a great perspective of letting them go. And then after stream winning, just carry on with body contemplation, so the jhanas become even more powerful, more frequent, more deep, so that you can let go of this concern with the 5 khandhas completely as an arahat. So that's this little talk this evening on body contemplation. Are there any questions about that? Okay, off we go.
Supatipano